Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine.
Hi, I'm the real Marty Levinson.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that lemon light city, sweet home Chicago. 224 446.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with Sonny Hirsch and your host of hosts, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at www.ntnm.org. You can watch all our shows on YouTube. There's something like 200,000 shows watched at this point, although the counter seems to be broken, YouTube. And we hope you're enjoying this nice mid-August day, mid to late August, depending on when this airs. I forgot to tell Jim when it was going to air, so now he's got a clue. Community policing, the schedule is changing. In the 24th District, Sergeant Kristen, who's been great, is trying to adjust the schedule to make everybody happy without making. You can't make everybody happy. A lot of people don't realize a lot of districts are only having a district-wide meeting. Some of them don't meet every month. I mean, she's trying hard to give every single beat a meeting every single month, except for December when she's the only person who's going to be in that office. So, I want to give her a lot of credit and attend your community policing meeting because the schedule has been changing in the 24th District. You need to either go to ClearPath on chicagopolice.org or you can call Neighborhood Relations at 312-744-6321. Basically, the 10 sector meets on the second Thursday, the 30 sector meets on the third Thursday, and the 20 sector meets on the fourth Thursday of the month. And it is now a pleasure to introduce you to the leading election lawyer in the universe, if not the world, or the state of Illinois, or the alternate reality Star Trek might provide some people. Jim Nally, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the intro, Avi. And I will be happy to be one of the best election lawyers in Chicago. That's even enough for me.
Well, you're definitely a heavy hitter, and I know people have actually been fighting over you, and you can only pick one person per race.
Well, things are already heating up, and it's not just the weather. I apologize for the casual attire, but we're in the monsoon and heat season here, and I just couldn't get a jacket on today.
No, listen, I'm fine with it. The one thing I will tell you is that I'm all geared up for, I'm geared up for politics. Last night I finished spreading 120 pounds of manure onto my plants, 40-some plants, and I'm good till September in terms of food and all that. Oh, and I want to thank you too because I still have a little bit of those stay away squirrel pellets of yours, and I'll buy another bag, and it really keeps them away.
Yeah, well, you go to all the trouble of putting in the garden, and the last thing you want to do is feed the squirrels, and your hard work is not rewarded. So.
Yeah, that would be, there's nothing worse. I wait for a tomato, and I'm looking at this big, beautiful tomato, and the next day I see a bite taken out of it, and it's laying on the ground. It's just not a good thing.
No, it kind of kills your appetite at that point.
So we've got major changes in election laws this year.
We have some very big changes in election law. I'll try to summarize them for you, and I'm sure we'll be talking about them when we get into the height of the season. But Governor Quinn on the 4th of July signed an election law bill that made some fairly significant changes in the law as it will affect people running in 2012. Now, the primary election has been moved back to March, which it traditionally was. It was moved up in 2008 so that Illinois would be a player in the presidential primary.
Are we still going to have early voting?
Oh yeah, all that will still apply.
So Jewish Chicago around the late February, early March.
Right. But the election itself is now back to the third Tuesday in March, which will be March the 20th.
Yeah, that was the Obama rule, moving it to February.
Right. Well, in 2008, Obama was running,
right.
and they wanted Illinois to play a role because in many election cycles with the March primary, by the time March rolled around, the nominees for both political parties were chosen.
As a matter of fact, I hate to say it, but I'm a little afraid because the last time on the Republican side in 2008, I endorsed Giuliani And by the time the issue came out, when you put out 3 weeks in advance, he was already dead in the water. So it's a hazard for me, too.
Well, the problem we had was in the off-year election in 2010, the primary stayed in February, and turnout was abysmal, and the candidates were uniformly complaining that it really reduced the election season to 1 month, because effectively you had the holiday season taking you all the way up through January 1st, and then you had a primary on February the 8th. So it was really 30 days, and the candidates were saying that's not enough time to get our message out and to meet voters, because nobody's paying attention until after the New Year day. So it's gone back to March. I think that's a good thing. I think it gives more time for the candidates to get their message out, more time for the voters to kind of get into the focus on the election and the candidates and what they have to say. So I'm in favor of moving it back to March.
No, I am too. And if you think about it, if the beers are really good and everybody's paying attention to the beers, I mean, nobody really started anything for that February 5th anyway till right after New Year's.
Right, and that was the problem. And it really was unfair to the candidates to try to have to run a whole campaign in a 30-day period. And also, the voters really didn't get a chance in a lot of the races to find out who was running and what their message was. And I just think that extra, 5 or 6 weeks, particularly the timing of it, will give the candidates more time to develop campaigns and the voters more time to get educated on who's running and what they're up to.
No, and I think that's a good thing, even though in some ways, I had my most successful Jewish Chicago's for the February 5th, but I don't know, probably because of the judges, and there's a lot of judge
Well,
stuff.
there's going to be a lot of judge stuff this coming cycle, too, because there are going to be probably a record number of judicial vacancies on the ballot. It's a combination of a lot of things, but right now, as we speak, there are 5 or 6 vacancies on the Illinois Appellate Court in the 1st District, which is Cook County. And there are also, in my estimation, there will probably be at least a dozen countywide vacancies for the Circuit Court. And we're kind of coming to a witching hour with the sub-circuits, because you may recall the first judicial sub-circuit elections took place in 1992. And the people who were elected in the various 15 sub-circuits within Cook County, who were elected in that first election in '92, when the sub-circuits first came into being, by 2012 will have 20 years of service, which for pension purposes puts a lot of them in a position that they're ready to retire. So there are going to be a lot of sub-circuit vacancies throughout the county. Right now, I know in the 8th sub-circuit, which is the sub-circuit that runs kind of in the lakefront, basically from Rogers Park as far south as Bridgeport, there are probably there are at least 4 vacancies right now.
4 minimum, and by the way, also I've already interviewed 3 in the 8th, and there's 1 more scheduled for the next shoot.
Yeah, and the 8th sub-circuit in particular probably has the highest per capita population of lawyers of all the sub-circuits in Cook County.
Well, it's right along the lakefront.
Right along the lakefront, you got a lot of lawyers who live in that community. So that one...
And even 2 Jewish guys named James.
Yeah, which, well, James is a nice name. I like that.
Really? Boy, I'm surprised.
So,
Mr. Nally.
And they're actually, I know both of them, and they're both very good guys.
Yeah.
But there will be a lot of candidates obviously running, because you've got a large population of lawyers, and lawyers are the people who become judges. In the 9th sub-circuit right now, I believe there are going to be 2 vacancies that are going to occur. But again, this is very fluid, because there's a lot, as you know from the last legislative session, there's a lot going on with the pension system that affects all public employees.
Yeah, and you know what? We have time. We should explain to people that with the judges, so the stuff that bill is seeking to do is to, actually make a judge pay much more into his pension, might actually lower the pension, delay the pension. I mean, depending on what final bill might actually be passed and all that. And it might serve some people better to retire with the 20 years and the full pension now.
Well, the current system for judges, as far as the pension goes, is that the judges pay about 11% of their salary into the pension plan, which is a significant amount of money.
It is.
And they are allowed, after 20 years of service, to retire with an 80% of salary pension. There are also some age requirements there too, not just the 20 years. And
So if you become a judge at 12, you can't retire at
you're not
32.
going. No, that's not going to happen. But the bill that was introduced this past session that did not get before the legislature, but may be brought back in the fall session, would change that and give three options that new judges who came aboard after January 1 of 2011 have a new pension plan where their pension is capped. And the pensionable portion of their salary is the same as the Social Security tax cap, which is right now $106,000, which means that judges under that pension system, if they get their full pension, the pension would be the equivalent of about $60,000, $65,000, which is significantly less than what judges under the old system got. And the bill there in Springfield would allow current judges would have to make a choice of either going into a 401k, where there would be no guaranteed payment. They'd put it in and just like into the stock market or whatever.
And pray the market
pray
works.
the market works, yeah. And it hasn't worked that well recently.
No, not at all.
Or the judges could join the new system, which puts a cap, or they would be entitled to get their current pension benefits, but their contribution under this bill would go from 11% up to 34%
Wow.
of their salary contributed. Think about that. A third of your salary
34%. Wow.
would be taken off the top to go into a pension.
Wow.
So, even though the judges enjoy a pretty good salary.
It's about 160, something like that?
Around 170 now. There's a COLA that kicked in, so it's depending whether they're associate or full circuit judges, anywhere between 170 and almost 180.
Yeah.
So
And the associates are a bit less.
just a little bit, yeah. They're probably about an $8,000 or $9,000 difference.
Yeah.
But obviously, I don't care who you are. If a third of your salary is going off the top into a pension, I mean, granted, it will be nice when you retire, but you still got to live today. And
That would be nice.
I don't think most people could take a 1/3 pay cut and be able to function all that well. So.
Yeah, I'm actually cheering for at least one or two more retirements in the 9th because, frankly, that's where I get a lot of action. The 8th and the 9th.
Well, the
Although we actually have somebody who might be running in 4 already, too.
yeah, there's I think because of the timing with the 20-year anniversary of the sub-circuits, there are going to be a lot of vacancies within all the sub-circuits countywide. And I think with the pension issues that some of the judges are looking at, there may be judges who look at their situation and decide they're better off retiring now rather than the uncertainty of what might happen to the pension plan in the future. So you put all that together, and I think there'll be a record number of judicial offices between the appellate court and the countywide circuit court vacancies, and then the various sub-circuits throughout the county. I think you could, countywide, you could possibly see 30 or 40 vacancies or perhaps even more.
Wow. I'd love to see that because I like covering that stuff. And there's actually less elections in this particular cycle because even though you do have the presidential election, because a lot of the county and state are taken care of during the off presidential
Right.
years.
I mean, now, the governor and all the statewide elected officials were elected in 2010, so they're not running again until 2014. Most of the county officers in Cook County are elected on that same cycle with the governor and state officials. So countywide in Cook County, at least, the recorder of deeds is up, and
Gene Moore's retiring.
and Gene Moore is retiring, so that will be an open seat. There'll probably be a couple people, 2 or 3 at least, running for that.
Jim Brewer's cousin. But
The Board of Review, too. There are 3 districts of the Board of Review, which was the old formerly called the Board of Tax Appeals.
Yeah.
And there are 3 districts now in Cook County, and those will all be up because they have to be redistricted based on the census.
Oh.
But it's not all that many offices compared with what we went through in 2010.
And that's going to, that's not as, so lots of judges. I mean, some of you quit, more of you run, lots of races. I need the guests. I like interviewing judges, and it's kind of a niche. And by the way, if you've never checked out Jack Lahane's blog, named after a Buffalo Springfield song, I'll think, For What It's Worth. So, it's worth checking out, and that way you can get a close look at the judges' races. Now, the requirements for judges' signatures are changing.
Yes. Now, what has also changed is that the sub-circuit judges have, since they were initiated, had to have 500 valid signatures to get on the ballot. So I've always counseled my clients to shoot for getting 3 times whatever the minimum is, no matter what office you're running for. So in general, sub-circuit judges, you know, if you came in with 12 to 1,500 signatures, you were pretty much bulletproof as long as they were of reasonably good quality. Now the sub-circuit judges are increased to 1,000 signatures as a minimum. And with that being the case, then, if you take the 3 times minimum rule, now as a sub-circuit judge, you're going to have to, you know, come in with, you know, close to 3,000 signatures if you want to feel pretty confident that you've got a cushion there. Because no matter how hard you work and how hard you try to get good signatures, I will tell you my experience is anywhere between 10 to 20% of your signatures will be bad, where the voter thinks they're registered to vote and they're not, or they're registered at their old address and never re-registered at their current address, or with the sub-circuits, they also have to live within your sub-circuit district.
Wow.
So if they don't, even if they're a good voter, you know, registered voter somewhere else, that signature is not valid. So sub-circuit races are going to get tougher in terms of the signature requirement, and you better get organized and get out earlier to do that. And the other interesting thing is, up until now, with this new law, people were able to circulate and file for multiple judicial vacancies. So let's say in the 8th sub-circuit where there are 4 vacancies, if you wanted to, you could circulate petitions for all 4 of those vacancies and file them, and you had until the last day to withdraw from all but one of the races.
And that became a real game of chess for who was going to withdraw from what and who was going to run against who.
I called it the dance of death. Everybody was over there on the last day at the State Board of Elections and saying, well, who got out of this vacancy and who's staying in this one? And there was a lot of jockeying and politicking and saying, you know, Avi, if you get out of this vacancy, then I'll stay in it and I'll help you with your vacancy somewhere else. So there's a lot of chess is a good way to put it, a lot of chess moves in preparation for that. You're really not going to have that opportunity very much anymore because the new law allows you to file for only 1 sub-circuit vacancy, and you could also file for 1 county-wide vacancy. But that's it.
You can still gather signatures for them.
You can still circulate for multiple vacancies, but on the day that you file, you'll have to pick one of those, and you would only be able to file the petitions for that 1 vacancy. So if you circulated for 4, you'd have to make that decision up front before you see fully who else is filed in that particular vacancy, and then, you know, assess the field and make the political decisions that all candidates have to make.
So it's going to rush the process 7 to 10 days or however long.
Right. People and people actually will probably start a lot earlier, just saying, you know what, I'm just going to circulate for 1 vacancy.
That's true, because when I was talking to some of the judges in the 8th, and I know 2 of them approached you for the same race, some people already are focused on exactly what race they're going to go for.
Right. I think a lot of judges are saying, well, if I can only file in 1, the cost benefit of circulating in multiple races but only being able to file in 1 at the outset is not worth it. So there will be people who circulate in multiples and still kind of try to read the tea leaves as far as who else is running. But I think a lot of people will just say, you know, I'm just going to pick a race and stick in it, and that's it. And particularly where they're going to need more signatures, I think more people will be focused on getting the signatures they need too, and not so much on the next step, which is, well, who else is running for that particular vacancy. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that changes the dynamics of some of these races.
Now, have they finished? Are the maps set for the sub-circuits? Are those changing at all? Or?
They don't change. This is very interesting. They're not required to change. You know, we have the census every 10 years, and legislative districts and congressional districts have to be reapportioned because under the Supreme Court's one-man, one-vote rule, you can't have a district where, you know, say 100,000 people live and then another district where 10,000 people live, because the votes of the people in the 100,000 district are diluted, whereas the 10,000 member district would have a much, each vote would be worth much more in terms of electing a representative. Well, sub-circuits are a funny situation because judges are not representative. They're not representing an interest like a legislator does. They are impartial.
Oh, yeah, because even if you're from a sub-circuit, you're going to handle the whole area.
Right. Sub-circuit judges can be assigned anywhere in the Cook County court system. handle any type of a case. They're not limited to practicing or serving within the sub-circuit. So, and by the nature of the job, you don't represent people. You're supposed to be impartial and make the fair call, and you're not representing my interests or yours. So they don't have to be changed. So right now, as far as I know, the sub-circuit boundaries are staying exactly the way they are, and which is interesting because they're over the 20 years since they've been drawn, there have been population shifts. So in terms of the number of people in the various sub-circuits, there are disparities now.
Interesting. Yeah, they would have to change. The demographics could change greatly.
Yeah, but there's no legal requirement that they be redistricted.
So, okay, so that's for judges. But, well, we do know the other stuff is changing, but there's actually a suit on now, so we don't know exactly where the boundaries are going to be for some of the things in Illinois. The
congressional map was signed by the governor. The Republican Party has filed a federal lawsuit seeking to overturn that. The protected types of interests are obviously the laws require that you draw districts in a way that don't dilute minorities' opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. There's communities of interest. There's some, districts have to be within reason compact and contiguous is what the legal term is. But the idea that a political party can say, well, it's not fair to us because the Democrats drew the map and we didn't have any chance to have input on it. Generally, the courts don't favor that. That's part of politics, and they're going to say, well, look, if you guys were in charge, you probably would have drawn a map that the other guys would be hollering about. So I know the Republican Party lawsuit, it doesn't just deal with the political end of it. They have raised other issues that relate to minority representation.
Not to mention putting 4 different people or 4 different Congress people in the same district. Not exactly, but
yeah, but there are other issues there. So it's not solely based on the Republican congressmen are being put in a bad light versus the Democrats the way these districts are drawn. But they're probably paddling upstream with that type of a lawsuit.
I would think so. This is a blue state, and they're going to be turning blue in the face, even though they're red. Anyway, too many puns, Avi. Okay. What other laws are changing?
Very interesting when it comes to state reps and state senators.
Yeah.
And I don't think this has gotten much play.
I haven't heard anything about this.
Well, you're going to hear now.
Okay.
All the state representative and state senate districts were also, redrawn based upon population, so they're new. So incumbent members will be running, but their districts are not going to be the same as they've been for the last 10 years. And also, there's a general rule that in order to run in a legislative or Senate district, you have to be a resident for 2 years prior to the election. But there's an exception in the election immediately following a redistricting that allows you, if any part of your old district is in a new district, you can run in that new district. So it gives people more of an opportunity where otherwise the residency requirement would shut them out. Because the districts are redrawn, they can still run in a district that was part of the district they used to live in before it was drawn. But they've also changed something in regard to the signatures there. They didn't change the number. It's still 500 signatures for a state representative and 1,000 for a state senate. But they now have put in caps. Now, in the past, if say you were running for state representative and you needed 500, you could file 5,000 signatures. And a lot of people did go out and get a big volume of signatures with the idea that, you know what, if I file 5,000, there's got to be 500 good ones in there somewhere.
Yeah, makes sense.
Which makes sense. Now there's a cap. This cap has been part of the executive offices in Illinois for forever. So if you run for governor or secretary of state, you were required to file no less than 5,000, but no more than 10,000 signatures.
Interesting. So that also goes against your 3-to-1 rule, or close to 3-to-1.
Right. You can't do that under those.
Interesting.
And now they're going to have the same proportion for state reps and senators. Now the minimum will be 500 for a state representative. There's a maximum of 1,500.
Yeah.
And for senators, it's 1,000 minimum and 3,000 maximum, which means that if you go under the old rule and say you're running for state representative and you file 5,000, everything after the first 1,500 won't be counted. and you can't use those in order to find 500 good signatures. So what it really means is, as a candidate, you're going to have to really do your own due diligence before you file and check your own signatures to make sure that you've got 500 good ones in that 1,500 that you present.
So you've got to be your own election board. Now, what happens if you've got a petition, there's 25 names on that thing, and 7 of them are no good?
Well, the whole petition doesn't go out, but the 7 names that are bad go out.
I mean, is there any way that you, the candidate representing it, can eliminate those 7?
Yes. If you go through in advance, and if you're the candidate and you find bad signatures, there's a process under the law where you can delete those signatures and file a certificate of deletions, and those then don't count against your 1,500.
So that way you can be your own election board and pick and choose some.
Right. What it's going to require candidates to do is the old idea of just filing a large volume of signatures and figuring, you know what, nobody's going to bother me because they won't want to look through all these signatures. Now you're going to have to kind of pretend that you're challenging yourself and check your own signatures to see if they're valid.
Yeah, because this is going to make it actually easier for people to challenge you.
Well, yeah, because they won't have to check 5,000 signatures
Yeah.
anymore. They're only going to have to check 1,500, and they can stop checking after the first 1,500. And if within that 1,500 you don't have 500 good ones,
Now, the
you're going to
50
draw a challenge.
That's for state senator?
That's for state representative, and then state senate is 1,000 minimum, 3,000 maximum.
Gotcha. So they do get the 3-to-1 ratio.
Yes, and the state reps do as well, because they're 500 to 1,500.
Right. And basically each state senate district contains 2 state representative districts, so it's logical that would be double.
Right. It makes sense. It's mathematically it's logical.
Yeah. So we've still got a couple of minutes. Want to talk about you at all? Want to talk about, you just came back from Ireland.
I did, yes. I had a great trip over there. My wife and I went over. Our son was doing an internship this summer, and
Very cool.
went over to visit him, and it was very fascinating. He's working in the Irish Parliament as an intern, and we had an opportunity to watch the parliamentary proceedings. And people have watched C-SPAN. You've seen this in the British Parliament. They have question time for the Prime Minister. And the Irish system is very similar to the British system as far as the parliamentary setup goes. And we got to watch question time. And if you've never watched it on C-SPAN, when it's on, take a couple of minutes, because it is very entertaining. This would be akin, Avi, to President Obama having to go every day over to the Congress and sit there and let congressmen fire questions at him.
I wish.
Yeah, that's the way this works, and it is it's very edgy. These guys don't hold back, and they can pretty much form the questions in any way. So a lot of the questions begin with, "Are you still going to continue to lie to the people about this particular issue, and why are you doing that?"
Yeah, it's like, do you still beat your wife?
Exactly. It's really no holds barred, and being familiar with the representative government system here, sitting and watching this for an hour or so, I was really like, wow, this is really, really Wild West. I mean, anything goes.
Even without cable, C-SPAN, I believe, is on the internet, so I'm going to have to check that out. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't believe the Irish Parliament's on there, but I know the British parliamentary proceedings are televised on C-SPAN.
Hey, any country that can't make good whiskey or scotch, I just can't watch that.
So I just found this very fascinating that the leader of the government has to submit himself to these types of questions, and these questions are just whatever the guy wants to spit out of his mouth.
I think that's great, and I think that's more democratic in a lot of ways than what we do.
It is. It's very interesting. It allows for showboating, so some of it is kind of detrimental to the process.
But I think people understand that. People know if it's there all the time, that's part of the process.
Right, and you know what? It does bring issues to the fore that might not otherwise get any play.
Yeah, and it's a shame that, because over here people are embarrassed to talk about most things. I mean, there's a lot of real issues that people just won't discuss, like drugs, race, and all the rest of it, in any kind of real fashion. In any event, I want to thank you very much, Jim Nally. If people want to call you,
312-422-5560.
And I want to thank Sonny Hirsch, my entire technical crew. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.